when wealth is accumulated, it's very easy for there to be this negative feedback loop of what I like to call artificial poverty, the sense of the more that I have, the more anxious that I feel, because the more complicated my life is, the more full my calendar is typically, the less I rest in any meaningful way, and the more that I feel in control of. And so the more that we feel that we're in control of something, often the more it has control over us.
Welcome to the 1110 Leadership Podcast, where we tackle issues at the intersection of leadership, faith, and culture. I'm your host, Rob Shields, Vice President of Strategy at 1110 Leadership, and I'm joined by my co-host, founder and CEO of 1110 Leadership, David Spickard. Proverbs 11:10 lays out a bold and countercultural vision. When the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. We're here to ask, what does it look like practically to be this type of leader? Leaders willing to invest everything they have so that everyone around them can thrive. Join us on the journey as we lean in, listen, and learn how to become Proverbs 11:10 kind of leaders. The kind of leaders that make our cities rejoice. David.
Hey, Rob.
Good morning. How are we doing?
I'm good.
I recently got some feedback that people like our introduction, so I have to double down on the approach.
You
forever.
got feedback about that?
I did.
had no idea.
Positive feedback. People are like, hey,
Okay.
keep going. Keep going. They love it. They love it.
All right. So I'm still good. I'll be good next time. What if I'm not good on one of these days?
You don't have to feel boxed in to answer the same exact way. I think they like the way we just start the intro. It's a habit. I watch shows like PTI, and Tony and Mike are always saying the same things every day. And it's good. There's rhythms to these things. Speaking of good, we have a really good, maybe great conversation. I think it was great with our good friend, Jared Korver, around a really important topic that we've talked about a lot here at 1110 and on this podcast, but I think this was a fresh approach, and I'm really excited for our listeners to hear it. Do you want to tee up a bit about our good/great friend, Jared Korver?
Yes, Jared Korver is a great friend of ours. He was involved with Jobs for Life when I was with Jobs for Life, and then has been an integral part of our work at 1110. He really helped me envision the Just Leadership groups and was a huge advocate for those, and is now currently in one of those groups. And Jared just has a profound perspective on money. We keep coming back to this conversation around money because it's so important. And he leads a wealth management company here called Beacon Wealth Care, and just has a really winsome and deep perspective that we wanted to make sure that we share with our listeners. So I'm excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, it's great. Our listeners are in store for a real treat. Could not have more respect for Jared and the way in which he approaches his work, his life. And I think it was a real joy to get to have this conversation with him. Without further ado, we'll turn our conversation over with Jared Korver. Jared.
Rob.
Welcome. Yeah. Welcome to the 1110 Leadership Podcast. We're really excited to have you here, man.
Likewise. I think the world of both of you and the work y'all do, and it's a joy to be here chatting with you this morning.
Yeah, Jared, we're really excited, especially because what we know is on the back of your wall right there. Not all of our listeners or viewers may be able to see it, but there's a portrait of Coach Dean Smith, the legendary coach of the University of North Carolina basketball team that we are all inspired by today. So we feel like we're in good company.
He's looking after us. He's looking over this conversation.
The patron saint of podcasting.
Yeah, that's right.
Sure. That's awesome.
Jared, we are excited to talk with you today as we engage with leaders. Money is such a significant topic that we end up discussing on a lot of levels, from how money has impacted our work, how we think about money, how we're consumed by it. We have a number of people who say things like, it's easy to make money, it's really difficult to have money, which is an interesting perspective to have. And also, we just know that, particularly in business, money is the tool. It's the tool of the game. And so the more people know about money and are gifted in how to think about money, the more they think about the ways that they can impact people around them in good ways and to steward it in a way that God has designed. So we know that money in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's a good thing that God has created, but it also can be used in ways that are harmful, or we also know that the love of money is the root of all evil. So it's just this double-edged sword. So to have you come with your insight and expertise in light of the work that you do is extremely exciting for us. So help us understand how you got into wealth management. What a part of your story led you to that? And I'm assuming that in your story, you developed a philosophy of money that allowed you to pursue a career that enabled you to carry out that philosophy around money.
Yeah. I think the thing that originally led me into wealth management was or financial planning, or whatever we call this industry, has many monikers, but I started my career in public accounting. I was working for the tax practice of a Big Four firm here in Raleigh. And honestly, the thing that kind of the first step away from that was just a real dissatisfaction with kind of the totalizing way that job took over my life and consumed Amy and I's existence. And so really at the beginning, it was just, I can't keep doing this forever. And then through that period of discernment, there was a lot of conversations with my family and people that I respected in the community. And I realized that there was a lot in my background and kind of childhood that had led me into an interest in personal finance. And those conversations kept snowballing, and the founder of Beacon, Sam Bass, I had several conversations with him. He reached out on a Sunday afternoon almost 11 years ago and offered me a job, and I said yes on the spot, and here we are. So there was a mixture of, at the beginning, just almost a necessity from a life perspective to just have some space to breathe, that to the extent that I would have almost done anything other than what I was doing. And then thankfully, I feel really fortunate that I was able to find my way into something that in hindsight feels what I was meant to do, and things that I can have a unique voice in. And then along that way, the philosophy that I have was really informed again by my childhood. I grew up in a family that was, I hesitate to say poor, because we always had something to eat. But my dad was a pastor in a real small church, and he always worked a second job just to make ends meet. Worked at UPS in the early kind of 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. shift when I was real little, and then went to work at the church. And then later on, he would work for a brick mason on his quote unquote days off. And despite that sort of material scarcity, and maybe not despite, maybe it's because of, my parents were the most generous people that I knew and know. And to the extent that their generosity was like the soup that our family swam in. We just didn't know any different. It was so constant. I remember I was in high school, and a kid that I went to school with, it wasn't even really a friend of mine, just an acquaintance. He came up to me during school one day and he's like, "Did your dad tell you he stopped and changed my tire yesterday?" And I had no idea. My dad didn't share that with me. He was just like on the way home, and this kid was on the side of the road with a flat, and my dad stopped and changed it. And that was not like, I wasn't surprised by that story. And so all of that kind of led to a real sense that money is an important thing, and our time is an important thing, and that generosity is really the key to any proper, at least Christian, understanding of what it means to be wealthy. And so I've really tried to infuse that into what we do at Beacon and what I do when I'm sitting with clients. And I have this, several years ago, I noticed, I was watching the movie It's a Wonderful Life, and there's a couple of scenes where this shows up, but I only recently noticed it. On the wall of the building and loan, and in that movie, there's a little sort of cross-stitched photo. It's not a photo, but it's cross-stitched, whatever, on the wall. And it says, I'm looking over at it right now, all you can take with you is that which you've given away. And that is a more succinct way of telling my story, and that I do think that's the bedrock of what I think is important, and that's how I ended up here.
Jared, I think in hearing part of your story and how you've been shaped to view this concept of money and how you view it in your own life and how you then turn around and help others view it for themselves, I'm struck by the commonality. I know that's true of David and I's stories as well, that it's almost like a rewiring that happens in a surprising way, either over time, and it was your childhood. For me, it was buying a one-way ticket to move to Ethiopia after college and working at an orphanage. It's like these experiences that surprise you of, oh, wait, I'm expecting the narrative to be lack materially means it translates to a lack in joy. And we buy that lie of the American dream a bit, and then those experiences start to rewire us and almost set us free in a way. It's almost like being unplugged from the matrix of, if I'm not bound to that path, this love of money, then I'm actually free to handle it very differently and take a whole different philosophy, because I get close to people who handle money in such a way that's so much of a counter narrative, like your dad, like your parents. And I can think of the people that I came and lived life with in Ethiopia for a year, and like these things have such a deep impact and can change the trajectory of our lives.
Absolutely.
That so clearly is the case in spending time with you. That has happened, and that now you're in a position to help other people almost rewire their own path in a sense. So I'd like for you to maybe help us pull the curtain back a bit. Maybe that's because all my daughters and wife just went to go see the new Wizard of Oz movie. And that metaphor is just deeply entrenched in our cultural moment right now. But we tend as a culture to idealize this next ring of wealth above us. I remember hearing about a study a while back that surveyed people across every income level, and it was fascinating. They found that all of those folks across the spectrum had one thing in common. They all thought their life would be better if they made $10,000 more than what they're making right now. Like the grass is literally greener for everybody. Like my life will be good if you just add $10,000 more to what I make every year, which we all know is a trap, right? Because when you taste it experientially and you maybe move up in your career and that goal line always moves ahead. You never feel like you've actually crossed it. So I'd love to just get your insight on speaking to how money can be a trap, even for the wealthiest and most financially secure among us.
Yeah, I think what's at issue here is money, past a certain point, allows human beings to taste a bit of independence. And it's an independence from each other, from our community, and it's independence from God and his provision. And for a long time in history, that wasn't possible. The rich were a very small minority of a community, and most people were living more or less day to day. They were growing their own food and relying integrally on their neighbor to provide something that they couldn't. And there are downsides to that. Certainly money has made it easier for goods and services to flow in an economy, and that's fine. But what has also happened is that we can easily get into a day-to-day way of being that forgets that we are not at the center of the universe, and that actually there is a part of us that is lost in that kind of quest for independence and the quest for convenience, where we are made to be reliant on each other and we're made to be reliant on God. And when wealth is accumulated, it's very easy for there to be this negative feedback loop of what I like to call artificial poverty, the sense of the more that I have, the more anxious that I feel, because the more complicated my life is, the more full my calendar is typically, the less I rest in any meaningful way, and the more that I feel in control of. And so the more that we feel that we're in control of something, often the more it has control over us. And so that is, I think, whether we call it a trap or just the way of things, is something that I am constantly at war within myself over what Jesus said about being rich. And he said it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. And there's a lot in that statement that he unequivocally just lays out there. And I think that's part of what he's getting at, is our wealth in a very direct way can keep us from recognizing our independence on each other and on God.
You're getting to the heart of the matter pretty quickly, Jared. And so I want to
Sorry.
unpack. No, I want to unpack this. How do you navigate that? Do you think about it in terms of, oh, I don't know, I shouldn't make more than this amount? Should I cap my salary? Does it inform how you give and your family gives and your Amy's decisions on how you give? How you then advise your clients, because they may not come in with that perspective. And so how do you, the level at which you might push on that with people around you versus just making that something you're dealing with personally?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. On the personal side, I think, for better or worse, probably better, there are no bright line tests for a Christian money ethic in the Bible. There's more of that in the Old Testament for the people of God, and there's a lot there. Much of the Old Testament law is concerned with economic justice, personally and communally. But for me personally, and for Amy and our boys, I think it is a constant wrestling with our desire being to draw a line in the sand of what our lifestyle is, independent of whether income goes up, to really have many conversations over long periods of time about what contentment means for our family, what is enough, and this house, the cars we drive, the vacations we take, the clothes we wear, what is enough? And setting aside my profession or our peers, tackling that question head on. And then to the extent that we get clarity about that and we have excess, which we do, then we try to be very open-handed and to just give it away as quickly as we can. And that's not to suggest that we are doing it perfectly by any means. I do feel part of the dissonance of my profession is feeling that tension almost constantly, because if seeing or talking or feeling about money pretty much always. And I think there is a certain amount of kind of soul care involved where for our family, we have to be trying to always err on the side of we don't need it. We don't need to do that. And it's freeing in a way to step out of the rat race. Mm-hmm. For clients, it is interesting. It does just depends on each relationship. Some of our clients are Christians, and there is a sort of explicit, sometimes implicit agreement or shared experience where these conversations are really easy to enter into. And my goal in those is not to be preaching at people or proclaiming this is what you should be doing, but to just be, if anything, a fairly consistent and quiet voice in their life that is suggesting that maybe there's another way. There might just be another way besides the cultural norm that we all swim in, and certainly in the U.S., in the West in general, and in Raleigh specifically, there might be a better way. There might be a way where joy and peace are found through less, through more open-handedness. For folks that aren't Christians or don't really have a desire to do that, there's still small ways where, if nothing else, I can just be a presence in the financial industry that's a little different, that is less abrasive and focused on investment returns and the latest opportunity du jour. That's just more of a quiet listening presence to help if anything, just give them a space to let go of some of their anxieties, even if they don't really know why. I'm okay with that. I think that any opportunity to be involved in kind of the loosening the grip that money can have on people's lives is something that I'm thankful for and try to take advantage of.
Hey, business leaders, are you and your team truly thriving? The Thrive Assessment from 1110 Leadership is designed to help you find out. This powerful 360 tool uncovers key leadership opportunities and challenges to help foster growth and help you build a thriving workplace culture. With insights into trust, health, relationships, impact, value, and engagement, you'll gain a clear understanding of where you stand and how to improve. But what sets the Thrive Assessment apart is the relational process. It's so much more than just an online survey. Our team walks with you through the results, providing support and coaching to help you and your team thrive together. Ready to take your leadership to the next level? Visit 1110leadership.com to learn more and start thriving today.
I hear just a real attentiveness we have to have. And there really is a point at which every one of us has a line, whatever that line is, I think, that you're articulating for us, because if we're not careful, money will get a hold of us if we're not both proactive and thinking about how we understand the more money we have, the more it leads to the things that you talked about at the very beginning. We call it the poverty of wealth, just the isolation, the anxiety, the busyness. Like you said, life gets more complicated. We've had another podcast episode where people feel like ATMs because people are always coming to them to ask for money and they don't know who to trust. We all have our different ways in which we manage this, but it has to be proactive and attentive.
That's right.
Jared, let's pull on that thread for a minute, because I like how you set it up earlier, this idea that even historically, the way wealth has moved us maybe from the communal towards the more individualistic. And there are pros and cons, like you mentioned, around having kind of cushion and maybe having so much cushion that you don't feel like you're dependent on neighbor or God. I think clearly that's caused money to be something that has grown, at least in the American culture, to be a very private thing, very private topic, an individual topic. You don't do shared budgeting. That's a very foreign concept of people don't know how much you make. You don't talk about it. And maybe that's for a Christian, it could even have the guise of humility. I don't want to brag, or I want my generosity to be done in secret, but it's so secretive. I'm fascinated to hear you speak on, you're in a role where people are opening up their finances, which is this now incredibly vulnerable act that is not common, right? They're not talking about this stuff, maybe even to their spouse, but if that, just their spouse. So it's a very vulnerable act. And then having you almost lay on the therapy couch and say, have you evaluate their spending and investing habits, give advice on what can be huge life decisions, right? Like, I want to make sure I get this right, not just for me, but for my kids. And then the more those zeros get added, feels like maybe the stakes even get higher of, I want to steward this well, which is a good intention, but I'm sure it comes with a lot of pressure. What is challenging, have you found, about that dynamic? And then on the flip side, what opportunities have you seen that open up in those discussions when people feel like almost they're disarming their finances in front of you?
Yeah, it is a challenge. I think there's a lot of overlap in what we do and what good doctors do. And it's awkward to even go to a good doctor. I love my doctor. He's a good friend of mine. But there is a certain awkwardness of, man, here's my body. Tell me about my body and all its flaws and problems and maybe good things as well. And there's a similarity in that and what we're doing here. And there is, especially early on when clients are newer, there's a significant period of time where we are getting into a cadence of finding a comfort zone. You get all the labs done, you get all the data. That's awkward, and there's blood drawn and all that. But then let's get into, this is maybe I'm torturing the analogy, but how are you sleeping at night? What are you working out regularly? more of the behavioral and emotional characteristics of our financial journeys. And everybody's different. Everybody, even within a couple, there's always some slight difference, at least, if not a huge difference, in how two spouses might relate to each other and relate to money. And I think I've touched on this a little bit, but my goal is just to provide a space. Our office, even the way we have our office is we hope it's not like class A office space sterile. We really want it to feel like an environment where people can drop their baggage at the door, at least for a little while, and enter into these conversations fully and with some amount of being disarmed. And a lot of it is just practice, and you get into conversations and there are people crying for good reasons some days and crying for bad reasons other days. And much of what we do is being emotionally available to people and providing a place where maybe we have some good questions that we ask that they would think to ask themselves. A lot of it is just listening and hopefully guiding them into directions and small actionable steps that, again, begin to peel away some of the layers of anxiety that they might feel. And yeah, the challenge comes when some people have a hard time being coached, or maybe they have a hard time getting past the purely sort of dollars and cents part of what we do. And at some point, there's nothing I can do to change that or to cause them to be some other way. And then it's just a matter of, over time, maybe you see some improvement or more kind of availability in the client, sometimes not, and that's fine. Our goal is not to be, again, prescriptive to everybody and banging them over the head with what we have to offer, but just making space so that if they want to take advantage of what they see, they can. And when they don't, it's hard. It is hard when people want to stay in the dollars world. There is a good service that we can provide. It's great, but it is, to me, it feels like they're missing out on what's really on offer.
I love that analogy. I don't think I've ever heard someone equate financial planning to being a doctor, but I hear your perspective in that you want people in many ways to be whole as they're thinking about their money. So I'm curious then, Jared, what is your hope for your clients, and what is your vision for Beacon? What are you hoping to impact through your work?
My hope for our clients is that they, through a period of months and years working with us, would begin to walk through life with their hands a little more open, to inhabit a posture of looking out for those around them, and to feel less of the sort of anxiety and the pull of, or the enchantment of mammon, which is a great book by a guy out of Villanova, Eugene McCarraher. He talks about how we have not been disenchanted by the philosophy of materialism and market economies, but we've actually just, our enchantment has become switched. We've become like Narnia in the winter. There's something that has bewitched us. And I hope that through working with us at Beacon, and maybe it's a big hope, an audacious one, but I hope that people would become unwintered in that way, that they would start to feel, yeah, like there's a different way, and I'm sleeping a little better. I'm being more involved in the community. I'm getting to know neighbors across socioeconomic lines in ways that I hadn't before. And we've seen that. It's a long, slow work, and I don't want my expectations to be too high in that we are playing some huge role in this. But that's my hope for clients, is that we all together would begin to step out of the perpetual winter and into the springtime on offer. And I guess the vision for Beacon is, and I want this to be a great place for our employees. I shared a little bit about how coming out of big public accounting firm, how that was like this all-encompassing, totalizing force in my life. And I really want this to be a place where people who work at Beacon can be excellent to each other and to our clients, but that it isn't something that's owning their lives, that they have space and time to be in their communities and to be in relationship with their family and friends, and that this is an important part of their life. And I want them to give their all to it when they're here. But I want them to feel a sense of health and wholeness around it as well, that it's not overcoming everything else. And then for our clients, again, I just, as we grow, want to always come back to that value of let's be a little bit different. There's plenty of great financial planners and investment managers around, but maybe we're the place where people are they're hearing something that they might not hear elsewhere. And it's informed by what we've been talking about so far. But I wish it was a very particular set of value adds that we can give, but I think it's going to always be a little more mysterious than that, because life is mysterious and our faith is as well. And there is a sense of just invitation that I want to always be a part of Beacon, to invite folks into a different way of relating to their money.
Man, maybe it's just because, Jared, we have kids around the same age, but the Narnia example is really hitting with me right now. We're deep in kind of the season of life. I don't think you ever move past that. Adults need to be reading that story, not. Right? I even picture that whole concept of de-wintering and how much we would prefer it be quick, but it often is slow. And that's language that we use all the time with 1110, of just the justice journey is a journey that never ends. And we need to take the long arc, not going slower than we need to, but understanding that it oftentimes is not fast.
Yep.
And I also love that, just having been in your office space, the intentionality. There's in the wintertime, there's a roaring fire. So you actually are contributing to the de-wintering in every sense. And so I love your willingness to be able to look inward on your own leadership. We've had the privilege of coming alongside you in several ways. One of which was you did a Thrive assessment as part of your involvement in your Just Leadership group. I'd love to just hear maybe what were some of your takeaways from that experience, because you're helping other people audit their lives. They're go into the doctor's office and disarm. Thrive assessment can be this disarming thing, right? This act of vulnerability, which you're not just coaching other people to do, but you modeled by doing this, which is not always something leaders are willing to do. What did that help clarify for you about your leadership? Would love to just hear our listeners hear a little bit about that from you.
Yeah, that was a gift to do. There is a sense of trepidation that I felt going into it, just inviting pretty thorough feedback from our people. But I knew it was healthy. We try and foster an environment where employees can come talk to me whenever, and we're having regular dialogue. But it's different. That's always, there's just the dynamics at play there are different than when you just ask in a sort of more extended, anonymous way for people's full thoughts. And I think what I took away from that was just a deepened appreciation for the folks we have here, and for how thoughtful they are and how much of a joy they are to work with, and what a gift it is to me to be even in the role of somehow leading them in any way. And so I was really, it was a gift to see that people entered into that process, the Thrive assessment, with intentionality, and they really were thoughtful about the responses they gave. And then I guess the other big takeaway for me was just a sense of encouragement to be more confident in the leadership role that I have here, and feeling almost like a heightened sense of permission, really, to be a voice internally and externally for what Beacon is trying to do. And that was really helpful. And I'm still unpacking that in a way of, like, how do I step into that role more fulsomely and really give myself permission in a lot of ways. I've got the permission from others, but I have to work through the ways that sometimes I deny myself the permission to lead in those aspects. So I really enjoyed that process. I think maybe my favorite part was coming back together afterward, and Rob, you led our team in the debrief session, which was a lot of fun. And so it's a cool tool, and I hope other folks will use it, because I don't know that you can really replicate it in the sort of day-to-day interactions you have with people. I think the scale of it and the format is something that is really a useful tool.
And you just articulated what we see all the time, which is leaders just need to believe that they're leaders.
Yeah. Imagine that.
And for their team to affirm that puts wind in their sails. But a lot of leadership is just belief and having the confidence that you have the runway, that people trust you and you can do it and they want you to do it. Jared, you're one of our Just Leadership OGs. I want to shift to that a bit, because you helped us in the early stages, helped me really flesh out this idea of pulling together a peer learning group around just leadership, how we talk about our faith, leadership, and what it means to be just with other peer leaders like yourself. You helped me recruit and host a pilot group that ended up being group 2, which was our formal, when we got it into a formal stage. And now you've come back to being group 7, where you're in your second year with a group of other leaders, that peer learning community. I'm just curious, while we have you, would love to hear your experience with that, how that has impacted you, how that shaped you as a leader. Do you think about being a husband, a dad? What has that group meant to you?
I think just getting people together, and this has been a thread throughout this conversation, the norm is for us to do these things alone, whether it's the money piece and idea of economic justice, or it's racial justice, or it's any type of making right a wrong that we see around us. We are surrounded by people who say the way to tackle that is by yelling as loud as we can by ourselves on the internet, or generally on the internet. And just leadership has been a way to be in community with people who are seeing these things from different angles and who have different lived experiences. And you can't hide behind a screen. You're forced to sit next to someone and speak with someone and listen to someone who's real flesh and blood. And I just think there's something irreplaceable about that, to be doing this work together. I don't think you can do it by yourself in any meaningful way. So that's been big. And it's just fun, honestly, to see like all the different things that people do vocationally, and to see the ways that they're juggling vocation and family and community is fun, and to be able to walk beside folks as they have highs and lows is a gift as well. But yeah, I think it's a phenomenal place. I look forward to every meeting we have, and even to just having sort of the structure of the content. I love to read and read a lot, but there is a nice sort of freedom in having assignments almost. They're manageable, they're not overbearing, but just, hey, this is the next thing we're looking at or reading together. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a great experience. I'm glad to have seen the evolution of it from the early beta testing to the smooth running ship that it is now. It's been fun.
Yeah, smooth running. Yeah. Thank you. I'll just say that I remember our lunch where you affirmed this idea, and you did what you just said your team did for you. You believed in me, believed in this idea, and now there have been 7 groups as a result, which is just awesome.
Good to show you the power of Lily's Pizza and the lunch
special.
That's right.
There, yes, exactly. We need to go back.
Jared, this has been a rich conversation, pun intended there, right? We've covered a lot of different categories. I love it. It has felt we've been firing on all cylinders, and it's been. I think this is a real gift, I think, for our listeners to be able to hear from your unique perspective and insight. You've experienced so much of 1110's work that I think that makes it a really fun to have this conversation with you and reflect a bit. So if we're going to ask you to do one final step, which is to digest and synthesize this into what we refer to as a bottom line, trying to use your terms. Like this is your language here, right? Around around money. So give our listeners this closing thought. It could be a word of advice or even just a small step they can take just to process this conversation into their daily lives. What would you give them as a bottom line?
I think there is a tremendous power in just looking up a little bit more and being outside and being impacted by the wonder of God's creation and his goodness and his provision and the abundant kind of mysterious amazingness of what goes on around us. And I think for me and there's a cedar tree out back of our office where a hawk constantly is sitting around this time of the morning. And even just seeing that kind of on a daily basis is a reminder to me that life, the gift of life and the gift of being is unfathomable and incredible. And I think maybe that sounds up in the clouds and vague, but I do think, back to sort of Narnia thing, that it isn't the small power of noticing what God is doing constantly that we begin to be freed from the enchantment of money, and that we start to recognize that money is only a blessing when we are involved in moving it so that it's blessing other people. And I think getting out of our screens and out of our sort of calendars and tech and all of this, and just beginning to notice our own bodies and what God's doing in creation around us is just an easy, small way to take this kind of step into contentment and to explore what it means to have enough. And it also, I think, invites us to see how much we're loved by God, and his love is incredible and unending. And sometimes for me, to see a hawk flying in the sky is the easiest sort of way to reorient my mind to that. So maybe that's my kind of weird way of inviting others into a similar practice of noticing and looking up some.
Love that. Just appreciate, Jared, your heart. And we could talk a long time about just the deeper ways to experience the good things that God has given us and to push back on the things that overtake us, carry us down the stream. It's more about swimming upstream around the things that give us life and give us wholeness. And you've done that as we talked about money today. So thank you.
Thank
Jared,
you, guys.
thank you, man. It's been awesome.
It's been a delight to be with you. Thanks for sitting with me and listening and asking good questions.
It's awesome. And thanks to Dean.
Thanks, Dean.
To learn more about 1110 Leadership, visit our website at 1110leadership.com. That's the numerals 11, then spelled out TEN leadership.com. That's 11 TEN leadership.com. There you'll find more resources to equip you on the journey of becoming an 1110 leader. You can also get connected to our growing leadership network. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend. To help others find us, you can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.